Hello, my fellow geeks. This is Vishal Mehra, and you're listening to the Indian AvGeek. Our guest this week is based out of UK but is very much connected with Indian aviation. The founder of Jain Aviation Consultants, Rishi Jain, is a freelance aviation consultant, aircraft broker, and most importantly, an AvGeek with a lifelong affinity for India and Indian aviation. Rishi's aviation interests include strategic development, network planning, bilateral ASAs, and London UK airport slot reform. We will be discussing all of that in the next 30 minutes or so. Welcome to the Indian AvGeek, Rishi.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Rishi, according to you, what is the state of the India-UK air travel right now? We all know it's a high-yield market and many airlines want their slice of the pie, especially as far as flights to Heathrow are concerned.
The market is doing very well. It's growing. You've got Air India and Vistara emerging. You've got British Airways adding capacity, and the UK and the last UK government under Rishi Sunak, just prior to leaving office, increased the number of flights permitted between London, Heathrow, and Delhi and Mumbai, which again is going to increase capacity and boost traffic. And with the North America and Europe, India markets growing, there's transit feed now that's growing, coming via the UK as well. So the market is totally booming. Next summer, British Airways will have 3 flights a day, London, Heathrow, Delhi. Air India obviously now has the Vistara frequencies, and they will be hopefully be increasing Gatwick, as per what I've heard from sources in the industry. And also they may be launching Manchester, and hopefully they'll be increasing Birmingham. There's going to be a lot of growth, and there's a lot of potential to be tapped as well, because India is an in destination for UK tourists and UK business to invest, because a lot of UK business and world business, as a matter of fact, has been very heavily reliant on sourcing from China. They now want to dilute some of that sourcing from China and shift it to other parts of the world. And India is becoming part of that mix. So you've got increased business people now going to check out factories, etc., in India.
So you think that's where most of the market growth will come from, Rishi, or there can be other avenues also?
There can be other avenues also. I mean, students may take a hit, yes, the student sector, with the fact the UK government might be looking to curb the number of student visas it gives, to curb an immigration issue that we have in the UK. But other than that, I see the market growing very heavily in the future. It's definitely going to be an area of growth. I mean, if you look at it, Air Canada has actually decided to launch this winter a London Delhi service that starts and originates in Calgary. So that shows how much potential there is there, because Air Canada would not start a service from a city like Calgary via a city in UK or Europe where there was no O&D traffic demand of serious nature.
Do you foresee any new routes being added to the India-UK market?
Yes, there's a lot of talk of new routes being added. In addition to, I mean, Virgin has just started Bangalore Heathrow. I foresee if Air India can get more slots at Heathrow, I can see Heathrow Bangalore starting. And also there's been serious talk, and Air India have filed for and have been holding slots for the IATA Northern winter season. That is this winter, 3 flights a week from Manchester to Mumbai. So, and also I'm hearing again from sources that Air India may be looking to add another destination into Gatwick. So there will be growth this winter, hopefully, on UK India. What you have to understand with the India market is, whereas a lot of foreign carriers, particularly like the big 3 in the US, they will quite often put their capacity on sale maybe a year in advance. With the Indian carriers, sometimes they tend to add their capacity more closer to the start date of the route.
Why do you think that is? Is that due to the way Indian carriers are allocated or allowed slots at Heathrow?
Partly, yes. However, it is also Indian carriers are very wary of the threat of particularly the Middle Eastern carriers, because if Air India was to put a route on sale months in advance, it's quite conceivable that the Middle Eastern carriers will add a lot of capacity to that destination from a Middle Eastern hub. And also, a lot of Indians are actually lastminute.com with the booking. We have this phrase in UK Indian community called lastminute.com. A lot of Indians tend to leave it very late when booking their tickets. They're not like some of my parents' friends who have planned their whole itinerary for the next year 1 year in advance, near enough. Indians, a lot of Indians tend to make more spur of the moment decisions with their travel plans and with their holiday plans. Also, a lot of business travelers tend to book late because their business trips come up late. So Air India could add extra capacity this winter and still fill it, because a lot of the market's late booking. For example, a lot of the weddings, a lot of the VFR tend to come back to India when they have family weddings. We all know weddings in India are not fixed a year in advance. Sometimes they're fixed 6 months, 12 weeks, 20 weeks in advance. So that's when they need to start booking tickets.
Back in 2016, Oman Air bought a London Heathrow slot for about $75 million from Kenya Airways. In 2020, I think Air New Zealand sold its slot for $27 million. I was reading last month, Romania's Tarom sold its slot to Qatar Airways. We don't know the details of the financial transaction yet. And that slot transfer would be effective 27th October. All these sale and purchase of slots at Heathrow keep happening. But as far as organic slot allocation is concerned, if I can call it that, there have been murmurings on Indian carriers being denied slots at Heathrow. What do you think about that?
Yes, because I am an advocate of serious slot reform at London airports. I think it's overdue and much needed. And Indian carriers have been repeatedly denied slots at Heathrow despite applying. This has been a historical trend right back from the late 90s. In the 2000s, Indian carriers managed to get slots at Heathrow. See, the Indian carriers have not always historically had the money to buy slots at Heathrow. Heathrow slots are readily available if you have a very large bank balance and you can buy them, okay, from a carrier that wants to leave or needs cash to trade in its slots. The only time really a carrier has got slots for pretty much a peanuts was Air India back in around 05, 06, 07 timeframe when it got some slots from Malaysia Airlines. However, it had to end some practices that it had in place on Malaysia Airlines in India to get those slots. That is very rare, and it's very rare these days to get them via the allocations. The last slots that came via the allocations in a big way were when Aeroflot was stripped of its slots at Heathrow Airport, and Vistara and a few WestJet and JetBlue were able to pick up those slots. It is incredibly difficult to get slots at Heathrow, and not only that, the UK carriers used to be scared of Air India back in the day, because when JID Tata originally negotiated the UK India bilaterals way back, he insisted that the Indian carriers could fly to any point from London Heathrow in North America. However, the British carriers, due to their agreement with the Americans, could not do that. They were restricted to certain destinations. And one of the theories as to why, particularly in the late 90s, the British carriers would not give Air India the desirable slots it wanted was because they felt that Air India would start flights to Houston, maybe Dallas, from places like London Heathrow over time, using those slots. And they would have something that the British carriers could not offer. The British carriers having to serve those routes from an alternative London airport, maybe Gatwick or Stansted.
Wow, I wasn't aware about that, Rishi. But do you have any more information on what was the dealing between Malaysia Airlines and Air India, and what concessions Air India had to give
Yes,
at
Air India
Delhi
used
airport?
to have back in the day in India, you used to have a seat block on certain routes with Indian Airlines, whereby if you wanted to come to India, you had to give a percentage of seats on that flight, a very small amount, to Indian Airlines or Air India, who would then be able to sell them as a code share through their own booking services. And also, sometimes you had to pay royalties or some sort of commercial agreement. It was a very outdated practice. It happened back in the day a lot of the time. A lot of those things were basically removed, and Malaysia Airlines pretty much gave Air India the slots at Heathrow.
Got it. So
I mean, they were
coming
not
back,
at terribly desirable times. I mean, back in the day, those times
yeah,
are now highly desirable now because Heathrow is totally full.
coming back to the Heathrow slot reforms, what do you suggest needs to be done?
I mean, there was a report by the last Conservative government under Rishi Sunak that was published, and one good point that was in that is a percentage of the slots need to be allocated on maybe a 10-year period. You know, it's fine allocating a percentage of the slots on a permanent basis. However, there should be a percentage of slots that are allocated maybe for a period of, say, 10 years, then reviewed after that because demand changes. See, there's been a lot of carriers over the years that have historically been able to obtain slots at Heathrow that now should not be there. I will not mention any names. However, there are certain basket cases of carriers that are currently flying into Heathrow that could easily fly into Gatwick. They do not provide any benefit to the British economy, to the British consumer flying into Heathrow. They are just flying into Heathrow primarily for their prestige. One of those carriers has tried to pull out. It is the government that is holding the carrier to maintain 3 flights a week into Heathrow. They do not need to be there. They need to be have stripped of their slots. You know, that will give a small amount. Another thing that potentially needs to happen is the UK government needs to relax some of the restrictions placed on Heathrow in terms of passenger numbers. There is a cap on the number of passengers that you can get into Heathrow. Now, they seem to have increased the cap at London City. I don't think that's going to help the UK economy in the same way a passenger cap increase into Heathrow would. The other thing is potentially looking at allowing mixed mode into Heathrow long term, whereby you can increase the slots, because the ultimate goal of everybody, a third runway, is probably years away if it ever happens, as
Well,
much as some of us would like to see it.
yeah, not
I
sure
mean,
if
also, I
that
mean, the
third
ideal
runway.
solution to a slot issue at Heathrow is to build a new airport hub for London to the north of London. However, the realistic chances of that happening in the present climate is nil.
Are you by any chance referring to the infamous Boris Island Airport?
No, Boris Island, as it was dubbed, was an airport towards Essex and Kent. That is
Right,
totally
right.
and utterly the wrong location. That has been debunked as a wrong location for an airport, not only due to the fact there's a lot of proximity of birds in that area, which could have a high level potential for bird strikes. You've also potentially got a WW2 World War wreck. And if a plane was to accidentally crash into that, which is in the sea in that area, or there could be massive damage. And that is a big problem that they will have to overcome and probably insurmountable to overcome if they are going to build an airport there. Also, it's not very desirable for the north of England and the Midlands. Wherever you build an airport for London, it has to be easily accessible by people from the north of England and the Midlands, quite possibly via HS2. So to the north of London is where it needs to be.
My next question is twofold. We were just talking about how there are 56 weekly services between India and Heathrow. 14 more have been added. Now,
Yes, and
my
7 of those on the British side are going to be used by British Airways.
right, but there also has been, I think, a new flight which Virgin has announced for next year.
Yes, 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 that may very well be the case. Yes, I
Um,
mean Virgin has just added Bangalore, Heathrow,
correct.
so
So
I'm not
maybe,
sure they're increasing Delhi and Mumbai.
yeah, they're not, but British Airways is planning to. Nonetheless,
Yes,
coming back.
British Airways is planning to. They're going three a day on Delhi Heathrow, and they're returning. The flight that they're adding is going back to the original additional flight they added before they retimed it. So it's going to be a morning departure from Delhi.
Let's say UK is able to liberalize slightly more of its Heathrow slots, right?
Yes.
Back in the day, maybe a decade or slightly more than a decade back, Jet Airways used to have a scissor hub at Brussels. Do you
Yes.
feel that a UK transit hub is a potential for an Indian carrier in the future?
As per my sources, in the very long term, Air India is planning it. However, slots at London Heathrow make it impossible. I have heard of a regional UK airport that has been named for this.
So, a
I
regional
won't.
UK airport
The
is
UK
being
airport, yes, has been talked about,
as
namely
a hub
Birmingham,
for Indian carrier
as a skizzer hub for Air India
to
because
mount
it has
flights
always
to
been
North
said
America or South America.
North America, not South America. South America would never ever route via UK because that would be miles off route. If you were going to do a stopping service, you would go via Italy or Spain if you were going UK Europe. There have been talks and rumblings that Air India would like to open a skizzer hub in the very long term at Birmingham.
Hmm.
We're probably not looking till 26 or 27 before this comes into fluctuation at the earliest, because there is probably a hit list of routes that Air India has to do before that, because Air India has realized not every single Indian passenger is willing to take a non-stop. Yes, a lot of Indian passengers like it because they've been brought up on very long journeys. You just have to look prior to the entry of Air Deccan and Indigo and all these carriers, how people would often take 32, 46, 72-hour train rides in India. So they're used to long journeys. However, a lot of people don't like being in the air for that amount of time. So Indian carriers know that they need to offer a stopping service to North America in addition to non-stops.
There is a diaspora group in Scotland which has recently launched a campaign for direct India Scotland flights. The advocacy group represents IT companies, tourism guys. They also say they have support from aviation authorities, and they say that the lack of such a direct flight connection is a significant missed opportunity within the India UK corridor. India is the highest demand country without a flight to Scotland. What are your
Yes.
thoughts on it?
Right. This is a fairly standard thing in the industry with India. That over the years there have been numerous airports around the world, not only in India, not only in the UK, that are chasing flights. So what they tend to do is they all tend to get business, diaspora. They try to put pressure on Indian politicians. I mean, Manchester quietly is probably doing the same. They've probably got their own reasons. You've probably got a shed load of airports in America doing it. Scotland will happen probably 26 or 27. It'll be Glasgow or Edinburgh. However, first of all, to make the route work, because the O&D, originating destination traffic numbers, are not going to be enough to sustain the route, they're going to need serious transit passengers. Now, where would you get that transit feed? That transit feed would have to be at the India end. Indian Air India, which is probably the most likely carrier to start the route, would need to build that up first. So 26, 27, yes, I think it will happen. However, just not right now, not only because Air India could also transit a lot of passengers onto Asia Pacific and Australasia from Glasgow, Edinburgh. So it will happen. But first of all, you've got to go into Manchester. I mean, that's a much bigger market and a much bigger gaping hole in Air India's UK network that's got to be filled first. And I would also hasten to say probably a second, well, probably would be Gatwick, given Air India's presence they're building up at Gatwick, a Gatwick Delhi or a Gatwick Mumbai first before they would look at Glasgow or Edinburgh. However, 26 or 27, I expect it to come.
Air India, of course, is on an expansion spree. Just added a 350-900 flight aircraft on the London route from the 1st of September. They're also planning to use the same aircraft for some routes in US and Canada. They've recently started a 320 route to Kuala Lumpur. They've added Ho Chi Minh recently. So they're expanding in Asia. They're expanding in elsewhere. Which new routes do you feel internationally Air India will start in the next 4 to 5 months, and slightly looking ahead in the next 12 to 18 months?
Well, the big one that we expect Air India to start with in the next sort of 4 to 5 months is Los Angeles. On LinkedIn, they've already placed an ad for a station manager in Los Angeles. That's a big one that we expect them to start. I would also expect them to increase frequencies on other routes. What you have to understand is they've got to integrate the Vistara schedule, first of all. So that means that some of the flights will have to be retimed, rescheduled. For example, at the moment, Air India has 2 flights for the IATA Northern winter season going to Frankfurt, departing at 1400 from Delhi, one Vistara, one Air India. That will be the high priority, first of all. Then they will be looking around that at what new routes, additional frequencies they can add. I know domestically, Air India is not going to be, it's been stated in the Indian press that they're not going to be adding any new domestic stations till they've done some serious integration with Vistara, which is probably correct and probably the right thing to do. Other routes that they've talked about, I talked about earlier, Manchester. I think that will be happening. I would not be at all surprised, given you've now got a civil aviation minister from Andhra Pradesh, that Hyderabad, Gatwick starts, because they probably won't get slots at Heathrow for that. Seattle within the next year, Dallas within the next year, yes. I would look to see extra flights being added to Italy, maybe the resumption of Rome. I would also look to see some increase in Australia, and I would also look to see possibly maybe a New York, Bangalore. That's another route that you could see. Air India's got endless possibilities in Asia Pacific, and also I would possibly look to see Air India maybe going into Central Asia more. There is a lot of potential for transit traffic from Central Asia to be hubbed through the Air India route network onward.
Let's break this down. This is very interesting. Let's break this down region by region, Rishi. So you as far as North America is mentioned, I heard you say Los Angeles in the near future, and then Seattle, and what else did you say in the longer term?
Dallas has been rumored. That's been stated in the Indian press.
Yeah. So do you see all these 3 routes being served direct from Delhi?
All these 3 routes will be served non-stop from Delhi. I'm unsure as to whether it's, I mean, if it was me, I would not go to Los Angeles right now. I would focus maybe more on Seattle. Also, we mustn't forget that in North America, Air India has just increased its frequency on Delhi-Toronto. So that is a new ad. And for the IATA Northern winter season, there will be 2 flights a day, Delhi-Toronto.
Right.
I think Seattle is more viable because you will get the transit traffic coming from Canada, because the taxes in Canada for air travel are very high, people say. So a lot of Canadians tend to go to America and slip across the border to pick a flight up to go somewhere. Seattle is very close to the border with British Columbia. We know there is a massive, particularly Punjabi diaspora and Indian community in British Columbia, Vancouver area. So Seattle may be more viable. Seattle also has a lot of IT companies. I think that is where Air India should be heading. And one route that hasn't been rumored that I would like to see Air India start on North America is Mumbai-Chicago. I think Mumbai-Chicago is a route that Air India needs to add to the network. I think Chicago is a very good place to transit traffic from United States onward to India.
Why Mumbai, Chicago in specific reason, Rishi?
The next route you would logically add for Chicago is Mumbai. It would make more sense, in my opinion, to add a Mumbai Chicago than to increase frequency Chicago Delhi. That's the Chicago, okay, the biggest market or the second biggest market from India to Chicago is actually Chicago Hyderabad. However, the problem with that is going to be the yield. With Mumbai, you will still get a significant element of corporate traffic to sustain the route. Hyderabad is probably going to be slightly more VFR heavy. So that's probably going to be the lowest yield for Air India. So they're probably going to prefer to launch, well, they should prefer to launch Mumbai, Chicago for that reason. And Chicago is a very good location geographically in the US to hub traffic through, because you can fish traffic out of California, Colorado, Arizona, Texas, Missouri, all these places, and get them on to India.
Got it. Let's slip back across the ocean. Italy as one of the routes where one of the markets where Air India might expand. Where else do you see Air India expanding as far as Europe is concerned?
I think rather than adding new destinations, I mean, Rome will probably restart, yes. I think Air India may look initially to increase frequencies to existing destinations, and Zurich, which they've just started, or Vienna will probably go to Delhi because of the linkage with the Star Alliance carriers. Sometimes it is far easier, maybe in an initial phase, rather than spreading yourself too thin very quickly, is to actually serve a few destinations and have them well connected to India. So that's something Air India may be looking to do, and increase frequency on Delhi, Zurich, or Delhi, Vienna, and making it daily. Also, they will probably want to add frequency on some of the routes that Vistara flies in terms of seat capacity. So I think what you will see on Europe is a rationalization of capacity, retiming of schedules initially, rather than a shed load of new destinations starting, and maybe increasing frequencies on places like Zurich's and the Viennas. Also, you may see Mumbai, Amsterdam start if they can get slots at Amsterdam, purely because right now slots at Amsterdam are incredibly scarce, and they might want to take some slots there while the going is good.
Yeah, I mean, Amsterdam is supposed to reduce flights further in the coming years, and the Dutch government and the airport have been at loggerheads as far as that is concerned.
Yes.
Okay, let's switch from Europe to South America. Do you foresee any direct non-stop flight between India and South America?
It has been it's been the holy grail for Air India for years to have a non-stop flight between India and South America once they were able to connect India, North America non-stop. However, they will need, it's not never, I think it will happen eventually. However, they will need a lot of feed from a lot of places to potentially make it work.
Yeah,
and that will probably not be on the cards till 2028 at the earliest. I think that's when you'll be looking at it. I mean, Air India would be starting flights to Auckland, New Zealand first. Johannesburg, South Africa has to come first.
Yeah, no,
Lagos, Nigeria has to come first.
Yeah, we'll get to Africa, but yeah, you're right. As far as South America is concerned, I can foresee that for that to start, they would need not just local feed from Delhi or India, but also some people coming in from South Korea, some people coming in from Japan, some people coming in from Kuala Lumpur, some people coming in from Singapore, even some people coming from different markets around, and then getting them all together and then taking them over to South America, and then at
Yes,
America they
I
would need
think
their Star
yeah.
Alliance
I mean,
partners.
I think Singapore and Japan might be a little optimistic for feed, but yeah, I think certainly they would need flights to Central Asia, South Asia, extensively flying. Then obviously you'd want some feed from the again Asia, places like Thailand, places like that. Yes,
From Europe to Africa.
yes.
You've been mentioning that Air India is very keen to start Johannesburg. Uh, do you see
Well,
anything else on the
Johannesburg has been
horizon?
talked about a lot by the airport authority in Johannesburg, and you have events in the industry like routes. So clearly, Johannesburg is targeting Indian carriers. We also know that on the Mumbai airport website, Air India has had listed an AI 132, 133 at time in the recent. Sorry, not AI 133, 132. They're using the nine frequencies to Africa. They have listed certain days of the week a Mumbai Nairobi. It is quite conceivable that the first route we will see added in Africa is actually Mumbai Nairobi, starting to supplement Mumbai Delhi. We know that people are saying that Indigo is doing incredibly well on Mumbai Nairobi, and I think the first thing you will see in Africa is Air India look to increase India Kenya capacity via Nairobi. I think Johannesburg is going to come at some point. However, as on another podcast has been mentioned, the fares are incredibly low yielding. So Air India will need serious feed coming from outside India to make it work. However, eventually they will need to have Johannesburg in their network. The traffic numbers are there, the yield there is the issue. And again, Lagos, Nigeria will come back as well because Lagos, Nigeria can act as a hub to West Africa, to the wider West Africa region on the one end, and India can act as a hub to take people from West Africa, Nigeria, Lagos onward to Asia Pacific and Australasia.
You're thinking Lagos from Mumbai?
Remains to be seen what Air India's thought process is. I actually thought they would go Mumbai Nairobi. However, they've gone Delhi Nairobi. So anything is up for grabs. It depends what Air
Got
India's
it.
strategy is for Mumbai, given the fact that Navi Mumbai is opening, and they will almost certainly want to do international flights from Navi Mumbai. So will Mumbai be a kind of a split hub internationally between Navi Mumbai and CSI, or would it just be based out of one airport? And does Air India also,
Got it.
another thing that Air India have been talking about is starting long term some Bangalore Africa flights. And another thing that you will also have to understand is it depends what the range capabilities are of the A320 series, the Neo, the XLR. How far can it penetrate into
Yeah.
Africa?
No, Air India has openly stated that they want to develop Bangalore as their third hub after Delhi and Mumbai. But what also Campbell Wilson has recently said that after North America and Europe, Australia is the third region they are very, very bullish about. So, what do you think? Do you see more frequencies to Australia, maybe a new route? There has been talk of a Bangalore Perth flight that Indigo has been exploring. What are your thoughts as far as Air India's expansion into possible future expansion into Australia is concerned?
Well, they've just added recent past Mumbai, Melbourne. I would look to see Air India increase capacity into Sydney, and possibly increase capacity on Mumbai, Melbourne, maybe make that daily. At times, Air India has indicated it would like to increase capacity into Sydney, maybe add some extra flights there. Also, Air India has been recruiting salespeople in the Brisbane area. I would not rule out Brisbane starting soon. The traffic numbers for Brisbane, Delhi are now there. And don't forget, there are traffic numbers. The traffic numbers, particularly in the IR to Northern winter seasons, are there for Delhi, Auckland. The problem is it is an ultra long haul route because of the flying time. That then hits your yield. The route may be very heavily VFR at the moment. So once they can establish significant feed from South Asia, Central Asia, Middle East, and UK, Europe into Delhi Auckland is a certainty, and I think Campbell Wilson has said as much when he was interviewed by the New Zealand media that Air India will eventually be flying Delhi Auckland.
I think in so many ways it's also similar to the predicament they face for South America because
Yes.
they need feed, and the same goes for New Zealand. All right, last question, Rishi. Um, what role do you see Star Alliance playing for Air India's expansion into different regions?
I think its role will be to aid Air India and feed traffic into India. So for example, one route that's being talked about for Air India in Asia is Taipei, Delhi Taipei. So Start Air India can fly passengers into, let's say, a Taipei and then shift them on to other places. So it will be to aid and abet Air India's expansion globally and provide Air India with connections so it can establish a very loyal and strong frequent flyer base in India. Because Air India needs to establish a very strong, loyal, frequent flyer base in India to springboard its expansion to other places. It needs to be able to have connections domestically in North America that, say, a British Airways has via a codeshare with American. Also, one of the dreams of Lufthansa right since the days when I was in university in 2003 has been to get Air India to operate some services into Germany for them so they can feed passengers onto other places because Air India can do it at a cheaper cost base than Lufthansa because of labor costs, etc. So Air India may very well be required by or approached by certain Star Alliance carriers to fly into their hubs and fit and provide them with feed so they can take them onward because Air India can do it at a cheaper cost base than they could, particularly when it comes to Europe. Also, some Star Alliance members, like United, may view Air India with skepticism in terms of if we go into collaboration with Air India initially, Air India might take a lot of our traffic long term.
Well, it's a give and take situation, and on your point for Air India having a loyal base of flyers in India, I think all of us would love to see that. But for that, the flyers would love to see a much more stronger, consistent Air India product.
Oh yes, I
And
mean
of
there's
course, all
several.
of that
Yes,
will
I
take
think it
time,
will
but
happen over the next 2 years. That.
absolutely. And Rishi, I just want to thank you. I think we can go on and on, but thank you very much for your time today. And this has been fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to doing it again in the near future.
Another insightful episode, and thank you very much to Rishi Jain for sharing his thoughts with us this week. You can follow him on X at rjain aviation. That is rjain aviation. We are streaming on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, and all other major podcast apps. Do take out 30 seconds, rate us, and leave us a feedback. It helps. And with that, I wish you well and happy flying, my friends.